We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Saturday, and oftentimes the case. We have another guest, and we have one of our favorite guests, Ed, a former coworker of mine for many, many years. He comes on the show and imparts some wisdom because he is an older man. He's older than me, and I'm fucking old as hell. So, Ed, welcome back. Thank you from the state of Tennessee.
Yeah, I just tripped the 75th year this year, so I'm still alive and still relatively healthy, knock wood. So we'll keep on going
Well,
as long as we can.
Well, happy birthday, Ed. 75 years old. I'm
Yeah.
coming up on 65, so I'm just knocking on the door of Medicare. But happy birthday. And
Oh, well, this
let me
was no November was my birthday. I'm just
November was your birthday? Okay.
yeah.
At 75, do you think you could still pull off a debate?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I
Better
think we
than
could fuck some
some.
people up. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no shit. No shit.
Interestingly enough, I just throw this in. I just saw Gavin Newsom,
Newsom.
California governor, fired the first shot of the next election season yesterday, and Trump's already firing back in his inimitable fashion. But I think it was the opening salvo. I
What do you
really
say?
do. Oh, he basically said, I believe in this, and this, which is all in opposition to Trump. It was a typical kind of stump speech, the kind of thing that starts out to let you know they're interested in the job. Uh, Looking back, if Joe Biden had said at the end of his first term, I'm done, let's find the next one, and Gavin had run, he'd be president right now. That's my assessment, but we'll see. I think
Well, I think
he's
you're
got
probably
what,
right.
yeah. I'm glad you agree. I think he's got, I mean, I don't see charisma in Trump, but some people do. Um, Gavin is far and away beyond Trump in that mode. Plus, he oversees the world's ninth biggest economy, I think it is, and
Yeah.
generally does a really good job. So, California's got problems that are inherent that have been there forever. Weather-wise and that sort of thing. And H.L. Mencken said the country leans and everything loose rolls to California. So naturally, they have a homeless problem and that because you can go there and you won't freeze to death any month of the year, probably. So that's all things to be dealt with. But Republicans aren't dealing with them. They're
No.
making,
No.
and they have no plans to. I haven't heard anything about them addressing homelessness of you other than rounding up people and sending them to a different country.
No, I haven't heard anything. The thing about Gavin Newsom, too, I agree with you. I think if we were to pick somebody who would be the candidate for the presidency for the Democrats in 2028, he would be far out and ahead of anybody, including Kamala Harris. And I know some people get angry about that. I'd love to see Kamala Harris as president, but this is about winning. Uh, People will say, well, California's got this problem, or it's got that problem, or he didn't do this. Haven't we learned by now none of that fucking matters? This is a popularity contest.
Yeah,
This is about charisma. This is about looks. This is about the way you talk. And he fits that mold. Whether
yeah,
he's a great politician or not makes no difference, apparently, because Donald Trump just got fucking elected.
yeah. I mean, a terrible person by any measure. Donald
Yeah.
Trump is a terrible, awful person, the most awful person who ever ran for president, much less got elected. Now, there have been some really bad presidents over the years. Looking back, though, all we get is what the historians give us. We don't know. I mean, growing up, everybody told me that Grant was an awful president. Now that's been reevaluated, and some people think he did a pretty good job considering the time and so forth. Jimmy Carter, when he was president, a lot of people thought he was a failure. Looking back, I think he did some really good stuff, and I'm sorry to see Jimmy go. I wish he had not had to see Trump get reelected before he left. But thanks, Jimmy, for your
Absolutely.
service, and certainly the only Christian president we've ever had in the the solid sense of that. Who, I mean, there were plenty of presidents who go to church and do, good works and so forth, but Jimmy was right there. I mean, that was such a huge part of him that he makes anybody else who makes that claim look like either a liar or an amateur.
What's interesting about that, I heard somebody talking, and I may be wrong about this, but I doubt it. Um, and this tells us how much religion has changed over the last, you know, 50 years or whatever. Jimmy was an evangelical too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Southern Baptist.
Southern Baptist evangelical. He was a Christian and he was serious and devout. But look how far we've come with the evangelical church from 1976 to 1980 to now. It's been a
Yeah,
dramatic change. It's not about what Jimmy and his religion was about then. It's entirely different.
absolutely. Well, Jimmy did leave the Baptist church primarily over their feelings about women and gays. He famously said, we know from history that gay people have been around forever, before Jesus and after, and he never said one thing about them.
Right.
And, the Baptist church, while Jimmy was president, actually came out with a thing of keeping women as second class citizens. And that's when he quit, because he said he could see no, in our modern day that application just didn't work anymore. So he had the courage of his convictions to leave a church that he had been part of since he was born. But to realize that just because there's something in the Bible doesn't mean that it is endorsed by God. Okay. I mean, slavery, good example. I mean, there were in the South before the Civil War, all the preachers were saying slavery was just fine.
Yeah.
Some of them still do.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting how cultures change so much. There's a famous interview that Jimmy Carter
Mm-hmm.
had, and in it he acknowledged that sometimes he has lust in his heart, and everybody was just crazy about it. Oh my God, Jimmy admitted this, Jimmy admitted that. Yet 50 years later, when Donald Trump says you can grab him by the pussy, nobody fucking cares.
Well,
That's
see,
really a degradation of this society, isn't it?
absolutely. It's also a problem with the media in that the media thinks they understand things that they don't. Jimmy was coming from an evangelical position that says if you look at a woman and you feel lust, that's a sin, and
Right.
that everybody sins. This is what he was talking about. It's sinning is just degree, not kind. Everybody sins. Everybody sins, according to the Bible, rape and looking at a woman with lust are essentially the same sin. You want to do that in your heart, is what he's saying. You want to have sexual relations with this woman. That is the sin. That you then act on it is a more venal sin, of course. And there are civic punishments for that. There are no punishments for looking at a woman with lust, or for a woman looking at a man with lust, I assume. But if you act on it, then we have civil ways of dealing with that. But you have to ask for forgiveness. There are ways to deal with that kind of sin. But his point was, I'm not perfect. Nobody is. This is one thing that I know I have done. I've seen a good looking woman and I've thought about, geez, I'd like to mix it up with her. That's all he was saying. But the media tried to make this big deal out of it when any evangelical church you would have went to, they would have known exactly what Jimmy was saying. But the
Yeah.
wider media just couldn't wrap their heads around it, mainly because there is no consensus on what the Bible says among Christian sects. There just isn't. One believes this, one believes that, another believes this, but there is no consensus, and therefore that is why that cannot be used as a religion, cannot be used to govern, because you cannot people don't realize how many Bibles there were before the King James Version that used different letters, different pieces, and all of that. And they finally put everything down, whittled away, whittled away, whittled away. Well, they came up with something that most people could agree with. So, what we have in the Bible is not some sort of moral code. What we have is a consensus that they see as that they have agreed upon that this is the behavior that is best, right? But almost every other religion has those same tenets: don't murder, don't steal, don't, the Big Ten, or some of the Big Ten anyway. People don't also realize that the 10 don't really matter that much. There's 600 more, okay, and
Yeah.
nobody keeps those.
Well,
They
and
don't even keep the 10 for that
what
matter.
you have to what you have to consider too is okay, the works are written, and then they had to compile them and aggregate them and do whatever. But when did they do that, and who did it? I mean, it was back, 1,000 years ago or whatever when they did it, and it was done by all men. There was no women offering any input to this thing. So you have to take that into consideration, because
Mm-hmm.
that was then, this is now, and we're in a much different world. I mean, back then when Jimmy was talking about having lust in his heart, there's no penalty for that. But if you act on it, there are some civil penalties for it.
Right.
Now, 50 years after that, we're finding out there's very few civil penalties for certain people to do whatever the fuck they want when it comes to being a sexual predator or a sexual or a rapist for that matter. That's
Yeah.
the times have changed, attitudes have changed, and influence has changed. So it seems like we got to keep changing up everything every fucking week to kind of keep up with the times.
Yeah, well, that's why it all boils down in most major religions. It all boils down to some form of love thy neighbor. If you
Right.
can do that, if you can do that sincerely, you're home free. That's it. You've made it. You are exactly where you need to be. And I mean, evangelicals get in my face and say, that's not what the Bible says. Well, the Pope says it is, okay? And Catholics were first. So, go find it out with them, which you've been doing for the last 1,000 years, killing each other over periods and commas and, what this word meant when.
Well, there's another aspect to this too that
Mm-hmm.
causes some confusion, and we have the same problem with the Bible that we have with the Constitution. What's written is written. How you interpret it depends on what you believe. And
Exactly.
people will take the same line and interpret it differently,
Mm-hmm.
like the Second Amendment. Republicans will tell you that means everybody gets guns and they can do whatever they want. Democrats and reasonable people will look at that and they say, well, a well regulated militia, it seems like you got to be organized if you're going to have all these guns. So it says the same thing, and people interpret it different, but I don't even think they interpret it different. They twist it to fit their agenda. So it's
Yeah.
not even really an interpretation, it's a perversion, actually.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Exactly. I mean, no one can tell me that the militia part isn't significant. It wouldn't be there if
Yeah.
it wasn't. It would not be there if it wasn't. And the idea, I almost, it's a good thing that I'm not a violent man. A guy walked in front of me pushing his buggy in the Food City the other day with his sidearm, you know, just for a second, my foot twitched. Just
You,
for a
you had
second.
lust in you had lust in your heart.
I did. Mm-hmm.
No, I
I
I
mean,
I, I get what you're saying.
he's going, well, you'll be glad when the terrorists come to Food City. Yeah, you'll shoot a bug. This right after I moved down here, there was an old guy went in there with a gun, dropped it, and shot a bag boy.
Wow.
Then he ran out and put the gun in his car.
As if nothing happened.
Nothing happened. Nothing to see here. Well, he got arrested and they took the gun and so forth. I mean, I don't think he did any time or anything. It was obvious an accident. I hope he had to pay something, but they took the gun. Probably
Now,
not.
whenever
Probably gave it back to him.
when I'm ever in public and I see somebody carrying a gun at a place where you don't need a gun, like a grocery store or wherever the fuck he is, my first thought isn't, oh, there's a patriot. Oh, there's a tough guy. Oh, there's a guy who's going to save me. I immediately think, oh, this poor man has a small dick.
Yeah,
Because
me too.
that's really what it fucking comes down to.
Well, one I don't understand. I mean, these guys like the long guns, right? They hang them around their neck or on their back or something like that. You know, terrorist walks in, sees that. What's he going to do? Pop that guy first. That's what's
Yeah,
going to happen.
absolutely.
You're just making a target of yourself if any of that ever happened. In my lifetime, there has never been a terrorist attack in Rogersville
Yeah.
of any. There were some in the Civil War. They used to pop each other pretty good, but I mean, after the Civil War, but that kind of died down.
Well, the whole idea of guns, it brings us into the whole point that this country is going into a time where it's going to be more volatile, more likely to see some violence, and we've seen some as recently. We had
Yeah.
a short spate of a lot of shit, and the first story people forget about the guy in Virginia that had his house raided. They find
Mm-hmm.
150 pipe bombs, which is the biggest cache if FBI's ever found, and some other explosive and some other weapons. Well, that's fucking crazy, and we should be really worried about that. But then, of course, we have the guy take a truck down Bourbon Street in New Orleans, kill 15 people, and injure 40 more people.
Mm-hmm.
And people are freaking out about that. And then we have the situation in
Vegas.
Las Vegas where the Tesla blows up in front of Trump's hotel. This is, people say, oh my God, it's going crazy. I go, this is actually what you voted for. You
Yeah.
voted for this culture of volatility and violence. And I'm sorry, we're going to see more of this. We aren't going to see the mass violence like we've seen in the past with January 6th. But you and I both said it. There are lone crazy motherfuckers that are going to do some fucked up shit.
Yeah, there and of course, there's all kinds of conspiracy theories. Pardon me. The big one, of course, was the guy came across the border, which is not true.
Yeah,
He
not at
rented
all.
rented the truck here, and the other guy rented the truck using the same app. That could be coincidence, probably not. I think they both have been traced to Fort Bragg, and they both were there at the same time. Um, the one thing I got to say, the funny part about the guy who had all the bombs, he was missing three fingers from making bombs. That's the funny. That's the funny part.
And
Okay,
he still made them.
but he still made them. A lot of these guys were counting on Trump losing, and
Yeah.
they thought
They
there'd be this
wanted the
big.
fight.
Yeah, they wanted this big uprising, so that's what they were going to do. But I also heard this morning, and I'm putting this out there. I don't know if it's true or not. Um, Supposedly, this was an interview given by some CIA person. I don't know if it's true or not. That the guy who shot at Trump, from top the building that
Right.
they killed at his rally, had visited Fort Bragg when those guys were there 147 times. Um,
Wow.
I don't know that that's true. We'll find out, I suppose. I haven't heard it anywhere else other than on that one report. And lots of stuff gets reported, just like that they drove across the border with the truck and all of that, which did not happen. Um, that these are both Army vets who both had supported Trump, supposedly.
Yep.
Why they would go after the Sugar Bowl crowd in New Orleans and then blow up a truck in front of um, Trump's hotel. Maybe that was a message to Musk since
Yeah.
they
I think it
used his
was.
truck.
I
That's
think it
my guess
was.
too.
A lot of MAGA
Strictly,
hate Musk.
yeah, strictly, yeah, very much so. And this guy used fireworks, apparently, like the mortar kind of fireworks. That's what was in the trunk of the bed or whatever they call it of this Tesla truck. That's what I heard this morning, that it was fireworks that he used.
You know
Who
what's
knows?
interesting about that? What's interesting about that? I've heard people that knew these people from previous time. First of all,
Mm-hmm.
I just want to say this: they both spent time on the same military base, correct? So they tried to
Yeah.
pull some tie together. I know the Republicans are trying to pull some tie
Hmm.
together. But here's the thing: the guy in New Orleans was 42 years old. He'd been out of the military for 10 years.
Right.
The guy in Vegas is 37 years old, 5 years difference. He's currently in the military. Now, I
Right.
suppose there could have been some overlap, but it doesn't. What doesn't make sense about the guy in Las Vegas, and I heard somebody talking about this, I'd never thought about this. Here's a guy in Las Vegas, currently in the military, currently a Green Beret, so special forces, right?
Right.
These people know how to build IEDs. They know how to
Yeah.
do this kind of shit. So this guy gets a Tesla truck for whatever symbolic reason. But instead of building an IED, which apparently the guy in New Orleans did,
Right.
instead of building an IED, he gets a bunch of gas cans, some jet fuel or something like that, and some fireworks. It seems weird. And here's the other thing about this guy: the car was parked in front of the building. 17 seconds later, it blew up. He'd already shot himself in the head, presumably, and then
Yeah.
had all this stuff go off. It obviously was planned. The intention was to do this, but it seems like a weird way to do it for a guy who knows better how to blow shit up.
Yeah. Maybe it was spontaneous. Maybe maybe he just decided, saw this other guy who he knew and said, "Okay, it's starting. I'm going to get in on it." Maybe.
Well, and that's the problem here is you get copycats and you got dumb fucks in Virginia or Alabama going, "Oh, it's on. Let's go." And that's what I'm concerned about. More of that kind of shit happening.
Well, I was in um, language school in the Army with 4 Green Berets. They were all psychopaths.
Were they?
I was scared to death of them. One time it was hot in the classroom, so the teacher said, "Let's just go outside. You can sit in the shade and study vocabulary." So I'm sitting there with my book open looking, and suddenly this knife sticks into a tree next to my ear. And the guy's laughing his ass off. That
Wow.
was his idea of a joke. Then he taught me how to do it. So watch out for me, buddy.
Don't give it. Don't.
But
And you can get some knives on TikTok shop that would be perfect for that.
one of the other ones we had, we were in Monterey, California. He had a girlfriend in Georgia. On a long weekend, he jumped on a motorcycle, rode to Georgia, loaded up her and her kids, and drove them back, and still made it back to class on Tuesday. Didn't
Wow.
sleep. I mean, he also told us about, I can't remember the name of the operation, but during Vietnam, they had the Green Berets out shooting like mayors of and people of influence who they thought might be collaborating with the Viet Cong, being
Wow.
assassins, basically. And all of these guys were involved in that. He talked about shooting this guy out of a boat from so many yards and getting him through the buttonhole. I mean, these people, these are not, uh, the song doesn't tell the whole story. Do you remember that? The Ballad of the
Yeah.
Green Berets?
Right. Right.
I'm sure there are many lovely, upstanding, outstanding individuals who are Green Berets. Don't get me wrong. I'm not painting with the brush. I'm just saying I knew 4 individuals who had very violent tendencies. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I think we're finding out that this country has a lot of people with violent tendencies, or at least talk like they do. And that's my greatest concern here. As you've said, they won the election, but somehow they still want to fight. They come to my lives, they come to my post, and they want to argue with me. And it's confusing to me. What do you want to argue about? You fucking
Yeah,
won. You got
yeah,
what you want. Go ahead and make fucking America great again. Jesus Christ. But this
yeah.
is all they know how to do. And like you
Mm-hmm.
say, I think they're disappointed that Donald Trump won because now they're not going to be able to get out and get their fucking trucks and their mules out and starts the Civil War.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of them were looking forward to, still are, I think. The other thing is the U.S. military, unless they're fighting a war, they have a lot of individuals who have to just sit around and clean trucks or play army, doing exercises and stuff like that. And Christian nationalism, oh man, that's the first time I saw it deep was in the army. They are there,
Really?
and they tends to be in the mid ranks, the sergeants and the staff sergeants and all of that. Not so many officers. Didn't see that as much, but it's heavy there. It's very heavy. The idea that we're that the Bible should be what we go by, and it's
Right.
fine to kill Arabs, or is that even a word anymore? They have different names, of course, because they are of a different religion. If you can kill anybody who has a different religion because God.
Right. Well, the fact that this guy in New Orleans had the Muslim name,
Mhm.
and he had the ISIS flag on the back of his truck, immediately they go to it's a foreigner. He's come across the border, and
Born
then when it
here.
was clear, and then when it was clearly found out that that wasn't the case, he may have said he joined ISIS, but it was like 2 months ago. So
Yeah,
it's not like he'd been entrenched in this. He'd obviously been radicalized. The other story, the things I hear about him too, he left the military. He was a real estate agent, but this guy had a lot of problems. He'd been
yeah,
divorced twice. He had some financial issues. He had a lot of issues going on, and maybe the pressure was too much, and he was tired of the country not taking care of him like he thought they might, and he just go off the fucking rails. And that's what this guy did. He went off the rails, and as soon as people heard the Muslim name, everybody's going, "Oh my God, oh my God, they're coming to get us."
yeah,
Donald Trump, to this day, even though he knows that this guy was born in Beaumont, Texas, raised in
yeah,
Beaumont, Texas, was in the military, he still keeps insisting that it was because the borders are wide open by
yeah.
way of Joe Biden. He will not step back from it. He doubles down, triples down, and eventually he'll just ignore it like it
Mhm.
never happened.
Right. And that's the idea. Whatever's current, he's going to say it, and his people will listen to him. And then, he'll say, well, we're going to have a new health care plan by next week. And then next week comes and nothing happens. So, speaking of health care, you remember when Obamacare was being debated, or,
Right.
the big criticism from the Republicans was, well, they'll have death squads deciding who gets to live and who gets to die. And I think this brought this out recently when the executive of United Health was it United that got shot.
Right.
Um,
Brian
uh,
Thompson.
yeah, when he got shot, um, when we saw that they turned down 34% of the claims, isn't that a death squad?
Yeah. I
It
would say it
is.
is.
It
I would
is.
say it is. I talked to somebody about we need to keep that in the narrative.
Yeah.
Some people keep coming to me and saying, "Well, you should do something on United Health and all those all the time." And I said, "Well, that's not really my thing." But
Mhm.
I've supposed the idea of somebody starting a TikTok that or YouTube or whatever, where it doesn't necessarily show anybody's face, but it shows the information or somebody reads the information about somebody being turned down by
Mhm.
United Health or whatever. And I saw one recently that said, here's a person that was in the hospital, needed radiation or something, and was in trouble, and they denied that claim.
Yeah.
These people are just it does seem like a fucking death squad. It's just not a bunch of people sitting in a committee,
And see, this
technically.
is this is something that if we had a Democratic Congress president, and I assume um, the court might be involved too, we can address that. We can say if a doctor says this person needs the treatment, they get it.
Right.
They
Right.
get it. There's no argument. There is no denying claims. If a doctor with a license says this person needs this procedure, they get it. And there's no copay that would keep them from getting it. If you are going to accept this person, take their money to insure them in case of a problem, then you're going to serve. You're going to pay for the procedure. You're going to pay for the medication. You're going to pay for the hospital stay. Either that or get out of the business. We don't need you. We don't need insurance. I grew up in an era, I'm 10 years older than you. Nobody had health insurance. Trust me on this. Maybe rich people did. I don't know. Nobody had it. You went to the doctor's office, you paid him $5 or $10. He gave you medicine or prescribed you or maybe sent you to a specialist if he couldn't handle it. But then they got this thing called major medical that most places offered, where you paid a certain amount of money, and that way, if you did get cancer or something really serious, it would pay for that. But
Right.
most things, it didn't. You have to thank Minnesota for the whole HMO thing, which is really where it started the wrong way. This idea that we'll get people in, and then it just snowballed from that. And now, if you don't have health insurance, you barely get in the door. I mean, just up on Main Street from where I live, I assume she is a nurse practitioner or a PA or something like that, has opened an office that's cash only urgent care. I don't know what she charges, but she gives a lot of shots too for weight loss and that kind of stuff. So these are for people who can't afford even what the Obamacare offers, because and I see this a lot, where they get these cheap ass policies, but then the copay is so high. If you need an operation, you got to come up with $7,000-8,000, or you're not going to get it.
Yeah, I was looking. My wife and I are going to be going on Medicare in April and May. And we don't go to the doctor a lot. We've got some minor things here and there. We go a couple times a year, so we don't really think about it. I was looking at the new medical card I got from UCare,
Yeah,
and they're no different than anybody else. And I was looking at some of the what not copay, the amount you pay before they start paying.
yeah,
And I was looking at one of them,
deductible
deductibles, yeah, and not in network.
network.
It's like $18,000.
Yeah,
Well, what if I'm someplace where I'm not in network, and
you're
now I got to come
stuck.
up with $18,000 just to save my life? And the, I'm not trying to get people to sympathize with me. I'm fine. One way or another, I'd find a way to come up with the $17,000 if I had to. But there's a lot of people that just can't do shit like that. They can't afford health care, so they buy the cheaper health care. And then they can't afford to use the actual fucking service that they've been paying for. It's
Exactly.
ridiculous.
Exactly, it is, and that can be addressed, but nobody's addressing it. And the reason they aren't, there have been bills. The Democrats have crafted bills, and they have put them in the Senate, and Mitch McConnell sat on them. They try to introduce him in the House. Johnson or his predecessor sit on them. They never get anywhere because the one person can stop a bill because it has to be introduced on the floor, and they can do that. So people try to do this, but it doesn't go anywhere because. And the people who need it most are the ones voting for the people who block it, which is insane. I blame them. I blame the news media on that. I I don't need to know. I don't need to keep seeing stories, horror stories from the floods we had down here. I mean, it's
Right.
it's human interest, right? But a lot more human interest goes to me. Um, there was a plastics plant where they kept the people there until it was too late to get out, and a bunch of them died. Don't hear anything about that anymore. What happened to the people who kept them there? Did it happen? We don't know. We're not. Nobody's covering that. The same thing with all of the medical stuff. We don't hear that on a daily basis, and people be outraged. But the oligarchs have bought the media. That's what you have to know. You only get truth from guys like me and Mike and some others, because we don't care. We don't have to make money on it, right? But
Right.
the
Exactly.
TV stations, the radio stations, the newspapers have to make money, and so they're going to go with the ones who will pay them. It's that simple. They're
People
bought.
have been talk. People have been talking about and fearful of this country becoming an oligarchy. But I think a lot of people believe that we've already become that. I mean, we've got a big alleged billionaire being president. He's nominating billionaires to the cabinet. We know that billionaire and big corporations are pretty much controlling our Congress. We for all intents and terms, we are a democracy being controlled by an oligarchy.
Yeah, that's it. We are, I will go so far as to say that's what we've always been, except for a
Well,
very
yeah,
brief window. I mean, it was rich guys. Thomas Jefferson, not poor. Benjamin Franklin, not poor. None of these guys were poor. Very few of them who started the country, right?
right.
And then gradually we got up to the Gilded Age where there were, the Rockefellers and people like that. There were just a few of them. They ran the whole country. It was only after the Depression where they lost some, and we had Roosevelt with a lot of regulation to keep them at bay for a little while. They've been fighting back ever since, and now they're back. Now we are in a new Gilded Age, and quite frankly, the billionaires are not. They're not po folks, but I mean, it's the trillionaires who are running things, and there are more of them all the time. I read something the other day that said 2,700 people control most of the money in the world.
Wow.
How
Well,
about that?
and having Elon Musk in the position he's in is kind of like the past, but saying the quiet part out loud.
Yeah,
He's there, he's bold, he's in your face. He's basically saying, I have $400 billion. I'm the richest guy in the world. I can do whatever I fucking want. And
yeah,
that's exactly what's happening. And this is where you think it's going to butt heads with Donald Trump, because he's fucking playing Donald Trump every time he opens his mouth. And what's Donald Trump doing? Not a fucking
kowtowing.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, he is. Normally, he would kick him to the curb. I'm the boss. I'm in charge. And you know he wants to do it, but he can't because
yeah.
that money means so much to him.
Well, yeah. I mean, Musk got him elected, quite simply. That
Yeah.
was the thing. His money got Donald Trump elected. Now he owns him. I put up a thing the other day. Did Musk outbid Putin? What happened here? That's essentially what did happen. And Putin got him elected first time. Musk got him elected this time because I don't think Putin put in the money this time.
I was talking to Old Soul about this, and there's quite a lot of parallels between Vladimir Putin and Elon Musk.
Well,
With
apparently
Elon
they
Musk,
talk all the time.
right. And they know the ploys, like Vladimir Putin. Donald Trump never gets too tough with him. And if he seems like he's getting out of line, something happens, like his pictures of his wife, naked wife, get out, or some comments are made from Vladimir Putin. It's like Vladimir Putin knows, okay, we'll let him go for a little bit, but if he fucks around too much, we'll rein him in. And we
Yeah.
can see that that's what Musk is doing. The whole thing with
Mm-hmm.
the deporting people, the
Mm-hmm.
immigrants. Yeah, but those tech immigrants, they're okay. Everybody thought that Donald Trump, all the Trumplefucks thought that he would side with them, but then he doesn't. He sides with Elon Musk. Now the Trumplefucks don't know what to do. He's their Lord and Savior, but he's going against them. They got to be fucking uh, dismal at this point because they don't know what to do.
Yeah, apparently maybe they'll run a pickup truck down Bourbon Street or blow up a Tesla in front of a Trump hotel, perhaps. But
Well, you know, yeah.
uh, I had a point, but it went out of my head. If you got something to say, go ahead and
Well,
say
no,
it while I think of
yeah,
it.
no, we were trying to determine why Army veteran who supports Donald Trump would drive a Tesla in front of a Trump hotel and blow it up. Presumably, he still loves Trump.
Yeah,
So basically, it's symbolic. He's trying to
yeah,
send a message. Here's a Tesla truck. We'll blow this fucker up right under Trump's name, and hopefully that will mean something. Donald Trump's a little thick, so it won't mean anything at all. They'll just, the interesting thing about it is he's talking a lot. Donald Trump and the people are talking a lot about this guy going through the Bourbon Street in the truck, right?
right.
They're
Nothing
going through
about the
with the truck,
hotel.
but they're not talking about the hotel. What's the one difference there? Well, two differences. First of all, the guy in Vegas is white. Second of all, the guy in Vegas was acknowledged to be a Trump supporter. We don't know
Right.
about the New Orleans one for sure. We're
Yeah.
kind of guessing he is. But it's interesting. They don't talk about the Vegas thing at all.
Mm-mm. No, and they won't. Did you see that his invitation that apparently he had meant to send it as a direct message to Trump? I mean, had meant to send a direct message to um, his buddy Musk. to encourage him to come to Mar-a-Lago for New Year's Eve. He was basically begging. He actually posted it on Trump Social by accident. And it was like, we haven't seen you in a while. Come to the center of the universe, Mar-a-Lago, and bring your kid and all that stuff. He was basically pleading. Well, apparently he did show up, so I guess it worked. But surely people can see that he's still trying to get that. He still sees Musk's endorsement as some sort of good thing. If he's that desperate.
Yeah. Do you find it interesting that here's this billionaire, richest man in the world, has basically moved into Mar-a-Lago? He's there
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah,
Does
well,
that
apparently he
some?
had gone home or something, and Trump was just really anxious to get him back.
Well, here's the
Mm.
thing. Do you think he's there because he's like a security blanket for Donald Trump? Do you think
Maybe.
it's there because there's some kind of sexual attention? Or do you think it's Musk using some control, keeping him in line to not go too far out of the fucking plan?
I
It could be
haven't.
any one of those things.
It could be. I haven't figured out if Musk is. Well, I know he's where he is because he started out wealthy and he bought a bunch of shit and he hired a bunch of good people to run it. I mean, he didn't invent Tesla. He didn't invent SpaceX. He didn't invent PayPal. He bought them, you know, because his daddy had an emerald mine. He's
Right.
basically a South African Nazi. But how actually intelligent the guy is, I'm not sure. I think he and Trump are the same guy. They have limited intellectual ability, but they have a lot of money to throw at shit. And Musk is just better at what he throws it at.
Right. Well, because he's got all that money and he didn't have
Mm-hmm.
the constraints of being in politics. I think Vladimir Putin, Elon Musk, and Donald Trump are the same people.
Yeah,
I think Vladimir's probably the smartest amongst them, as much as I hate to
definitely.
say that. He's the smartest or the best to
Most
hide his
ruthless,
deficiencies.
maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. But here's the thing is regardless of how smart Donald Trump, Elon Musk, or Vladimir Putin is, it's all shaded by the fact that they have this emotional or intellectual flaw in that they're a narcissist.
Yeah.
That clouds a lot of intellect and makes them make some bad choices. And this is why they make bad choices. Donald Trump is without question the dumbest of the three.
Absolutely. In a way, I think they're all symptoms of a greater illness. And the greater illness is capitalism and the way that it's playing out now. I don't have necessarily. I'm not necessarily against capitalism as a system, if it is governed, if it is restricted, if we have enough regulation and so forth in place, which we did for a short time. People can still make a lot of money. And I have no problem with them making it through investments and so forth, as long as it's legal and not cheating and so forth. I don't have a problem with that. But also, they have to be willing to pay for the things that they use. I mean, they have a company, a large company in this country that is defended by our army. They use our streets, they use our electricity, everything that they do. Is dependent on other people. But there is always, since the beginning of the country, since we decided to go in a capitalistic way, which was the way that the British were before us and so forth, there is this struggle. And I'm going to sound like a classic communist here. That doesn't mean I'm wrong. There's a struggle between capital and labor. And when the two can meet in the middle and compromise, then we have a workable system. Since the 70s, labor has been denigrated and denigrated and denigrated. It should be on a co equal footing with capital, but we have empowered capital to the point now where capital is all powerful and dictates everything. The minimum wage barely moved since the 70s.
Right.
That can't be right. We know productivity dictates that instead of $7 and something an hour, the minimum wage should be $25 an hour.
Right.
That's for the McDonald's workers. That's for everybody. And we need to look at it rather from a time perspective. I have 24 hours. Now, if my daddy gives me a diamond mine or the proceeds from an emerald mine, then I don't have to do anything. That money works for me. I can sit on my butt for 24 hours a day, and that capital works for me.
Right.
I hire people to do things with that money that I don't understand and don't have even necessarily the ability to do. But that money will continue to work, and I will always be rich. If I'm born poor, however, I still only have that 24 hours in a day. Let's say I have to sleep at least 6 of those, but I can that other time I can possibly put into 2 other jobs and something. Why should I have to do that? There should be a balance here. There should be a balance where I work that 8 hours a day and I have a return. Maybe I don't get to be a millionaire, but I can afford home, transportation, medical care, schooling for my kids, the basics of life. If I put in my 8 hours, or maybe I'm ambitious and I put in 10 hours, 12 hours, because I want to get enough ahead to invest and join that investment class, that would be fine. But you got to start. You got to give them boots so they can lift them by their bootstraps. There has to be some sort of level playing field that you can rise from. You can do it with a universal basic income. You can say you can put limits on. We used to tax the shit out of capital gains and all that kind of stuff and put it back into the economy. It worked great. We had the golden age of America, 48 to 73. Um, there was racial prejudice that kept some people out of being able to join that idea of creating generational wealth. But white people in general, if they wanted to work from 48 to 73, they could do that and they could be gainfully employed and they could afford a house, a car, and everything I just said, food on the table, clothing, and so forth. And it wasn't that hard a stretch. You
There's something I wanted to bring up. We know the certification is on January 6th, and
Yeah.
assuming they have a Speaker of the House, that will happen, and they'll be able to certify. As we're recording this, they're voting on Mike Johnson as we speak, and I will tell folks that Old Soul is texting me updates. So if anything changes, if he gets voted back in as Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, I'm speaking of, or if he doesn't, she'll let us know and we'll let you know here. You will have already known that because this will run tomorrow. But the thing that I find interesting is the inauguration is on January 20th,
Yeah.
but Donald Trump has made a point to invite everybody to a victory party in Washington D.C. At the arena there, a victory party on the 19th of January.
Mm-hmm.
That seems really strange to me. Why would you do that? I have some theories, but I'm curious as to what you think.
I have pondered that because I just heard about it yesterday, and I'm going, hmm, are they getting ready to do something? Are they gonna? Is it gonna? Is he gonna give out some sort of marching orders for people to come and be there so they can keep away anybody who would want to disrupt? I don't know. I'm waiting to see what it could be.
I think it could be a couple of things personally. First of all this talk about something coming up at the last minute, we know Donald Trump is paranoid. So he wants a group of people there
Right.
to because the inauguration is fine, but we know nothing draws like a Donald Trump fucking campaign rally, and I'm sure
Right.
that's what he's thinking. So is he afraid something's going to happen at the last moment, and he wants a crowd of thugs there? Or the other
Yeah.
thing is his ego. We know that when he had his first inauguration, he was talking about how it was the biggest ever, most attended, all this stuff. And then the videos came out and said, yeah, well, not really. Not that
No.
many people showed up. So is this a way to pregame this situation to get a bunch of people there excited for the rally and then just pawn them off on the inauguration so he doesn't look ridiculous? Either one of those scenarios is possible.
Yeah, and remember they did something. I don't remember if it was an executive order or if Congress did it, but they clarified what the Speaker of the House can do on the 20th. So far as certification of the vote goes, or 6th,
Right.
January 6th, I mean, or
Right.
what they can do on the certifying the vote, and which is essentially nothing, right? So I don't know if that's somehow tied into it that there's machinations of all kinds going on there. I'm not sure. He won. Nobody's contesting that he won. I think it's ridiculous and I think it's pathetic that he won, but nobody's contesting it that I know of.
That we know of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe he's why the 19th? The big celebrations on the 20th, in theory. Um, Maybe he thinks it wouldn't be focused on him enough. I don't know. I mean, he's got to go up there and take the oath, right, and um, do the ceremonial stuff on the 20th too. It makes no sense to me at
Well,
all.
the other aspect of this is that maybe he's just readying people for the only thing he can really do. He's not substantive enough. He doesn't know what he's doing. Anything that gets done during his administration is something instigated and administered by somebody else. He plays golf and gives fucking campaign rallies. He gave
Right.
campaign rallies while he was president. This
Mm-hmm.
is all he knows how to do. He's a performance artist. He's
Yeah.
not somebody who's a serious politician or even a serious businessman. All he can do is come up and spout and spew and rant and rave, and then hopefully everything else falls in place. It's
And
maybe
do
the
the
only thing he feels
weave.
comfortable doing. Yeah, the weave, the fucking weave.
Why nobody, when he said that shit about the weave, why nobody ever said, why are you doing this very obscure, arcane method of communicating when what you want to do is get people to do what you say? Um, he never in any way, pointed out some sort of benefit from the weave. It
Well,
was just,
he's so smart. That's just how he thinks. One thing I
yeah,
learned when I first got into broadcasting is communication is simple. And
yeah,
it should be simple. When I say something to you, you should be able to readily understand what I said. And that's,
right,
I always hated Howard Cosell because he used these big words
yeah,
and a lot of words that nobody ever fucking knew what they were. So to me, that was the opposite of communicating. You're
yeah.
saying these words to impress these people and impress yourself, but you're not really communicating. Every time Donald Trump says, "Well, it's the weave," it's about like those dickheads that you grew up with and in school, and they bump their heads or they tripped, and they go, "I meant to do that. I meant to
Yeah,
do that." That's pretty
exactly.
much what it is.
Yeah, I mean, that was his way of defending his obvious dementia, which is another element that we have to consider here. At what point does the 25th Amendment come into play? And will it? Um, are there people? I mean, can Musk say this guy's over the hill? You got to get rid of him, and they would do it. Um, I mean, the people he's putting in there are his handpicked, basically cronies.
Yeah.
Linda McMahon and people like that who have no expertise in anything. Although I'll give her credit, she does run the wrestling organization. And that's something. I mean, what was it? The Minnesota wrestler who became Jesse. He hates her
Jesse
because
Butler.
yeah, he hates the McMahons because they fired him because he tried to start a union. you
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
you know.
absolutely.
So
Well, the thing about it is that Donald Trump is going to take over. He's not going to do much of anything. And you talked about the 25th Amendment.
yeah,
And people have talked about impeachment. That isn't out of the realm of possibility. If he takes office and he just starts to destroy the economy and the chances for the Republicans to win in 26 or 28, it's conceivable they'd want to get rid of him because, as I've said before, once he becomes president, he's nothing more than a liability to the
right.
Republican Party. The problem, I think the scariest thing about this, and especially since we're dealing with the Republicans, if they use the 25th Amendment or if they impeach him, they got a problem.
Yeah.
Because whether the majority of the Republicans agree with that, the base will never agree with that. You will lose the base. They will hate you like they hate fucking Elon Musk.
Yeah.
So the Republicans are in a bad situation. He's going to destroy the economy, destroy the country, destroy the Republican Party. And if they impeach him or they use his 25th Amendment, then a third of their party is going to hate them. The only real beneficial way to get rid of Donald Trump, if the motherfucker keels over. If he dies in office, they can say, "Oh, he was a martyr," but now we got to lead on and find his somebody to take the helm. That's the only way that everybody in the Republican Party makes out if Donald Trump actually dies in office. Now, here's
Yep.
the thing: he could get sick. He could have dementia. Even if he has dementia and they kick him out, they're going to hate this fucker because he's their Lord and Savior. So Donald Trump, given his age and given his condition, he could keel over. But he's also like a cockroach. He keeps coming from under the fucking refrigerator every goddamn
Yeah.
time. So when you have a group of people like the Republican Party who've already tried to assassinate him twice,
Yeah.
two Republicans were the ones that did it, not
Yeah.
Democrats.
Yeah.
If I'm Donald Trump, I'm going to get a lot of fucking protection, and that protection is going to be from Republican motherfuckers.
Yeah. I still don't think anybody tried to assassinate Trump. I think it was a put up job. I really do. No one will ever convince me that it wasn't. We know more about these two guys, that the one that ran down people with the truck and shot at them, and the guy who blew up the Tesla. We already know more about these than we do about that kid. We've heard nothing else about him. We don't know when they buried him. We don't know if there was a funeral. We don't know anything about him. It dropped out. Why was that?
Well, that's a good question. We've got a fucking Wikipedia, uh, Wikipedia page on fucking Luigi and probably a movie coming out sometime soon.
Yeah.
And who remembers the name of the 18-year-old kid with emotional problems shooting at Donald Trump, apparently clipping his ear? We don't know fuck all about that guy. We know even less about the guy at the golf course. That is very strange. You don't take a shot at a former president and that not become big news. It just doesn't happen that way.
No.
It is troubling.
In my opinion, it was an event, a campaign event orchestrated by the Secret Service. The kid was a dupe. He was told to fire in the general direction. Trump used a blood clamp to slap his ear with. You can see him do it. It's not real blood. I know what blood looks like. That's stage blood. And there was no mark on his ear. What was it,
Yeah.
a week? And it was gone, and there was nothing, and he's going to grew black. He told one person it hit the ear lobe, and the other times it's supposed to be at the top of the ear. Nobody's asking these questions. It was a put-up job, period. Call me a conspiracy nut if you will. I don't care. I'm just telling you what I believe based on what I see. And it was quickly hushed up. It was put under the rug. Nobody's examining it, or they're hitting a brick wall if they're trying to.
Yeah.
So I think it was his own people, in that case, putting this up so it would look like the left was out to get him. Why they didn't pick somebody that wasn't so obviously a Trump supporter, I don't know. And why was he shooting at Trump? It makes no sense. None of it makes any sense. Now, this kid has supposedly visited the same army base where these two guys came out of 147 times. I don't
It's
know.
weird.
I don't know if it's
Well,
true or not. I'm just saying
well,
it's out there.
when it first happened, the first thing I said, the assassination attempt, when it first happened, I said, "Oh, this is a fucking setup."
Yeah.
And then after I heard a couple people actually died, I go, "Well, probably not a setup. Nobody would go to that extent."
Yeah, they would.
But then later I thought about it and I go, "Well, he did kill 1 million people during COVID. So
Yeah.
apparently collateral damage isn't a big fucking deal to him."
Yeah, and they may have told the kid shoot over his head, and he wasn't that good a shot. I mean, there's many things. He in theory he came close. I don't know. It didn't look. Trump, to me, the narcissists I've seen under pressure, they're cowards.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh yeah.
they're big talkers as long as they are protected. But the minute they're not, they're cowards. I do not see him standing up and waving his fist like that after a possible. He had to know there was no other shooter. Um, the Secret Service had to allow him to do that. What I know about the Secret Service, when a situation like that happens, president has nothing to say. You know, they piled on Reagan when he was shot, for God's sake.
Right. And
You
stuffed
know,
them in a car.
exactly. You know, there was none of this, wave your arm in defiance stuff. Um, unless they have gotten rid of every professional Secret Service agent there is, and there are nothing but idiots in that position. That was that made them look incredibly bad,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
incredibly
I mean,
bad. And to
and they
me,
got
that's
called out in hearings.
yeah, exactly. And they, one person resigned, but I don't think any of those got people that were actually there that day were in any way censured.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Well, that's the thing I'm wondering about. What happens when Donald Trump becomes president and things start going to shit? The economy and just life in general goes to shit because Donald Trump doesn't know what he's doing. We know what happens with Donald Trump. It's always a distraction and it's always a performance. Perfect example. Before the election, oh, I'm going to bring down prices. Oh, I'm going to bring down inflation. Soon as he's elected, well, that's kind of hard. I'm not sure going to be able to do that. But hey, I'm going to take over Greenland. I'm going to make Canada the 51st state, and I'm going to take back the Panama Canal. That's all it is with him. When he
Yeah.
fails at something, he just changes it to something else. So we're in for a lot of that over the next period of time that he's president.
Absolutely. I mean, his first deal, we're going to build a wall. Well, no wall was ever built. Small sections were built that fell down. Okay. Um, I'm believing that there will be some attempt to round up some illegals and deport them as a show. But there's going to be all kinds of pushback that's going to delay that. There's going to be court stuff. There's going to be all kinds of stuff. And he will gradually, that will go away too, right? That will not be the emphasis because the guys that run the meatpacking plants know they're not going to get anybody in there other than illegal immigrants to do it or to
Right.
pick
Well,
vegetables. And all the tech people, for God's sake, right now, half the tech people in this country are out of work because they've all been cutting back. You have all these people, all of these American tech people who went to school here, actually worked for tech companies here, know the process. They're not going to hire them. They're going to bring these people in from India and China on these special visas, right? Is that going to fly? I don't know. I know Elon's for it, and I know why they're for it. They can pay these people a lot less. That's all there is
right.
to it. It's not that they don't have people to work. It's not that they don't have people who know the job. It's that they want to be paid. These people come in and work for pennies. That's the deal. They just want to be here.
What's going to be interesting is that one of the reasons we're here is because of the media and the media talking shit about Biden and the Biden administration and hyping up Donald Trump. This is really going to be a tough moment in time after November 20th. Republicans own the House, they own the Senate, they own the presidency, and they're going to try to blame failures on Democrats, but they can't.
Mm-mm.
They've got what they wanted, and now they've got to show their stuff. Unfortunately, they have no stuff to show because they don't do anything. They don't build anything. They don't pass anything. Do you think the media then says, all right, fuck, we got to talk about the tragedies in this country, and we don't have Biden or Kamala to beat up on? What do they do in that case? Do they just
Uh,
ignore it?
They do because they're owned by the people that would suffer because of what they have to say if they told the truth. I mean, Bezos owns newspapers, so every Wall Street Journal is owned by the guy who owns Fox. The major media outlets are all in some way compromised. There are individuals working in there who occasionally may get a word in or something, but mostly they were for Trump. They highlighted Trump's successes. They highlighted Trump's or Biden's shortcomings, and the same with Kamala. Everybody saw that. Now, the big thing was the prices, right? The inflation. He sees he can't do anything about it. He's backing off. I haven't heard I haven't heard the media criticizing him on that. Have you?
I have not, and that's why I'm glad to see the media is starting to take a shit and people are counting on them less. So that means it's really going to be put on people like you and me and other people in the media that
Mhm.
aren't co-opted by the wealthy to spew the truth, and hope against hope that more people come to independent media and get their information. I mean, it's all about the narrative, like we were talking about before. This is a popularity contest, so you got to be the loudest and you got to be the most consistent with the information. So it's really going to be on the people themselves to
Mhm.
inform other people, and hope to God that's enough. Thankfully,
Yeah.
people are leaving in droves from mainstream media. That's helpful in its own right.
Mhm. Yeah, I noticed that Bezos lost his two best reporters to some other outlet. And same with the Atlantic. I think they left
Right.
there too. So yeah, hopefully that somebody will create an entity or take over one of the networks. It would be great if somebody with a lot of money. I'm talking.
Soros.
Yeah, that would be
I
good.
got
Buy a
I got my
network.
review. I got my review with Soros coming up, so I'll talk to him about it.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah. He sent me a Christmas card.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He's
I'm
a great
retired,
fucking guy.
you know. Yeah. I don't know. There's probably a few billionaires that are decent people. Mark Cuban comes to mind, but and Warren Buffett doesn't seem to be terrible, although maybe he's just a monster who keeps a low profile. I'm not sure. I mean, he owns most of Bank America, which started out as a mafia bank in Italy, for God's sake.
Right. Right.
So who knows? And they're a major. I think they own BlackRock or one of those, Vanguard or BlackRock, one of the big investment firms. I mean, he keeps a low profile. Makes me wonder if he isn't the the guy behind it all. You know, I
Well, I
once
think
uh, I once shot a commercial in the house across from his, and I was very for the Nebraska lottery of all things, and
wow.
I couldn't believe how modest a home it really is when you look at it. I mean, it's a really nice home in a nice neighborhood, but the house we were shooting in was much better.
Wow.
Mhm.
Well, you give him credit for living modestly, but I gotta believe if you're a billionaire, there's got to be some fucking skeletons in the closet. You don't get to
Um,
that level without stepping on some motherfucker's feet, and I bet there are people who have stories about him too.
I think he keeps his distance unless, I mean, I think he's involved with this buying up of houses and trailer parks and all that. I think companies that he controls is actually involved in that. You don't see that. And correct me if I'm wrong if you're a Buffett fan, but um, I think he just keeps it on the down low. But there's so much going on in this country where people are getting screwed to the wall that um, that he's probably involved with. And remember those two names, BlackRock and Vanguard, because there's some shit going on there too that needs to be looked at long and hard.
Well, yeah, there's some serious shit going on with them. When we're looking at the next 4 years or the next 2 years with the Democrats, I think we've talked about this before. I'm as irritated and frustrated with the Democrats as I am the Republicans in many ways because of them just fucking this opportunity up. This was a prime opportunity to take control. And people all seem to agree that it's largely due to the fact that the Democrats have forgotten about the working people. I mean,
Exactly.
they talk about wanting to help the middle class, but I don't think they really address the real issues. You and I are in a different situation. We are where we are. We're past all the buying houses and all that stuff. We're where we are, and everything seems to be pretty normal, and there isn't much that's going to change. But my eyes have been opened about the younger kids, the millennials and the Gen Zs. They
Yeah.
get become slaves to debt with their education. They
Yeah.
get out. They don't get paid for shit. Now they can't afford housing or any discretionary money at all, which is um, which is horrible for the economy. And the Democrats don't seem to address that. Do you see them changing anything between now and 2 years from now with the 26th?
No, and I think it goes back to the war on the unions that started actually before Reagan, but he certainly contributed to it. And then the Democratic administration that followed, the Clintons, followed that same thing. They realized that the only people they could go to for money once the unions were basically crushed was the same people. They were heavily financed by Goldman Sachs and so forth, and there was a payback for that they had to do, and that had to do with getting rid of regulation. It had to do with getting rid of welfare as we know it. Remember that, which meant getting rid of welfare. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it all, they had to go along, or they didn't have to, but they chose to go along with the idea that the rich and powerful don't have to pay their fair share and everybody else does. And it goes down, and maybe the very poor don't have to pay as much. But when you think about sales tax, property tax, anything you buy tax right there, they really do pay through the nose.
Right.
And you see industries being taken over, like the healthcare industry, which was doing just fine when I was a kid without any insurance at all. And then suddenly everybody has to have insurance, and it doesn't do anything for them because they're no longer in business to make people healthy. They're in business to make money, period. And the best way to do that is not pay the claims, but keep taking the money, right? And politicians are
Right.
letting them to do that. I told you at the beginning of this, all we have to do is say, no, you can't do that. If a doctor says they get a procedure, you get it. We can do that.
Well,
And don't tell me we can't.
in this country, the richest country in the world, um, we should be at least afforded that. I mean, we should be in a position where people can. I mean, isn't it the case that the politician's first job is to protect its citizens?
Yes.
Now you're thinking militarily or law enforcement, but what is more of a problem in this country than illness? So why
Yeah.
wouldn't that come into play under the same circumstances? It makes no sense.
I'll say this too. We know that still in 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 America today, one of the most dangerous things that exists as far as healthcare goes is childbirth. Still. Women die in childbirth. Children die in childbirth. People can't afford the care, especially minority people. They don't get the care. And let me put it this way: this is an indictment on the medical establishment and the scientific community. By now, childbirth should be less a risk than a root canal. Come on, people. I mean, we've been at this for thousands and thousands of years. Can't we just do a little bit better? Can't we have birthing centers? Can't we have nutrition centers? Can't we do things? Can't we develop new procedures for childbirth that lessens the risk? And the answer is, of course we can. But no, we'd rather put all this research into weight loss drugs. No, we can do this, but it just needs to someone to say this is what we're doing. No more research on that. You're a university. You get government funds. No, you're not going to do weight loss stuff over child. Let's solve the big things. Let's solve cancer. Let's solve the big things, and then we'll work on hair loss and cosmetics and a weight loss and that sort of thing. It can't just be about the Benjamins when it comes to healthcare. It shouldn't be about them at all.
Absolutely. And it's not in every other country other than our country. And it
Exactly.
seems contradictory. It seems contradictory that you've got people that are against abortion. Save the children. Let them be born. Okay, well, then it would only make sense that you'd want the best birthing situations for
Yeah.
those kids that you're insisting on being born, or you be insistent on taking care of those kids once they were born. that's the problem with this whole thing. And this is where it comes out with the Republicans. It's not about the kids, it's about ideology, it's about winning elections, and it's the bottom line money. We're against it if we have to put money into it. But if we don't have to put money into it and we can inflict our religion or whatever on you, then you must do it. It's fucking ridiculous, and it's so transparent. Any idiot could see it, but apparently we have a country that's 49% fucking idiots.
Yeah, exactly. Right now, here in this area, they're restricting people from going to the hospital to visit. No kids, and only two people can visit anybody because there's a big flu epidemic going around. That should
Right.
not be happening. I mean, we have this preventative care is what we're supposed to be stressing. I got a flu shot. I got a COVID shot. I got an RSV shot. My wife just got her second shingles shot. So we're doing well. We're doing what we're supposed to do. But at the same time, when I went to my high school reunion, half the people there wound up with COVID because somebody showed up with COVID and spread it around. So we're not taking healthcare seriously. It's only to make money. Education, another one. Governor Bill Lee of Tennessee right now is pushing. He's got commercials on the air for what he calls the Tennessee Freedom Act, giving vouchers to religious and charter schools. Again, this is third attempt, and it will go through this time, I'm sure, because they want dumb people. They want really dumb people who don't know history, don't know mathematics, can't express themselves, and that's what they want, and that's what they will get. Do you think that if you graduate from a high school where they gave co-equal status to creationism with science, that degree is going to mean anything when you're applying to a college that is discriminating at all? Do you think you'll get into a Berkeley or Harvard or something like that with that kind of background? You won't. I'm sorry. They are they are denying an education to a whole generation of people with vouchers. And it pisses me off because I worked for an educational institution in Minnesota, and I voted to raise my own taxes, what, 6 times, something like that.
Yeah.
To now, somebody people would say, well, you got money, right? Well, not much,
Not
but
much. No, not much.
no, but I thought it was important that the kids be educated. So yeah, I would vote every time on the referendum to raise the taxes a little bit to help the schools every time. But I had no kids. So they want to take the money that I give, and I still do in Tennessee. A portion of my tax money goes to the public schools. They want to take that money and give it to an institution who will indoctrinate children in religious garbage, talking snakes and big boats with animals in it and all of that, and put it on an equal footing with evolution and the things that we know to be true. No, no, I say no. And the charter schools are just a financial scam. They've arranged it now so that hedge funds can invest in charter schools and double their investment in 10 years. So that's what that's all about. And
I was,
everywhere they study, charter schools and religious schools do worse
yeah,
than the public schools, especially
we've
charter
had
schools.
we've had charter schools that have just gone bust or have scandals.
Yeah,
It's just a shithole, and all vouchers do is give rich people a break on their fucking education and leave normal people out in the fucking cold. That's all it does. We've got, I used to argue with people when I had kids in school and there'd be a
yeah,
referendum and they'd want to raise the taxes. I'd had people in the neighborhood say, well, I don't have any kids in school anymore, so I'm not voting for it.
yeah,
Well, you short sighted motherfucker. And they could not
exactly.
understand why I said they were short sighted. I said, yeah, you own your home, right?
Somebody's
And
going to want to you want to sell it someday, right?
you're going to want to sell it. And they're going to want to buy a place in a good school district as
Yeah,
opposed to a shitty school district. So you're going against your own self-interest. Now that said, I have to offer this up too as a counterpoint. You and I worked in a school district.
Mhm.
There's a lot of bullshit waste that goes on in the school district. They could shore that
Absolutely.
shit up too.
I would say it's top heavy.
Oh,
Almost
absolutely.
almost all school districts are top heavy. Give me some teachers and a couple of principals, and we're done. And the qualifications for school board, to be on a school board, you should have some sort of gravitas in the educational area, I would think. I'm sure there are great school board members who are plumbers or car salesmen, some great ones, right? But
Yeah.
in general, I want somebody who knows something about educational trends and that sort of thing, and doesn't have to, and can come in at full speed and not have to be brought up to date on why this or that needs to be done. But I'm 100% against vouchers. It will destroy the Tennessee school system even more than it already is. Um, and I think they probably have the votes to get it done this time. The only reason they didn't last time was that he partnered with Hillsdale College, and they were going to be the ones setting up the schools, these charter schools. And it's a right wing college, right?
Right.
Rush Limbaugh was a big fan of theirs, but the guy from Hillsdale badmouthed public school teachers in such a way that there was such a pushback that they had to drop it last time. Well, he's not involved this time. So it might actually make it, unless there's some real pushback here. And the governor's on 3 and 4 times a day pushing this thing.
If people are wondering why I keep looking up, is because they're having the first vote
Uh-huh.
of the Speaker of the House. Jeffries has 214,
Yeah.
and Johnson has 210, and three are others. So it's getting down to nut cutting time. We're gonna be here when this ultimately gets answered. If there is Johnson is elected on the first vote, or how long is this fucking going to take? So hopefully before we wrap things up here, we'll know what the outcome of this is. I'm thinking, as a hardcore liberal, and you're a hardcore liberal,
Hardcore.
moving back to your home state of Tennessee, and what we've seen from Tennessee as of late, and I'm looking at it from the outside.
Right.
Tennessee, from what you tell me and what I see, is basically fucking Mississippi or Alabama. It's pretty much the fucking same thing.
It may actually be worse because Mississippi and Alabama have never pretended to be anything else.
Right, right, absolutely. This has got to be frustrating for somebody like you to live in the midst of this morass, this bullshit, this racism, this clearly evangelical controlled fucking state. That's got to be frustrating for you.
It is, but it also keeps me focused in the sense that even the people I like voted for Trump in some cases, and it's a short-sighted thing, and I know why. They only watch Fox News, blah 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 blah. But at base in the South, and even in border states like Tennessee, and even in East Tennessee, which is solid Republican, and it was solid Republican from the Civil War. So this area stayed with the North. They sympathized with the North, and now, but they're as racist as anybody else. And racism is a huge part of it. It just is. And I'm sorry to have to say that. But it was, and I was guilty. I have residual guilt from when I was growing up, and especially in high school. Well, we had just integrated when I went into high school. So shortly before that, when I was a freshman in high school, his first year we integrated, seeing that no black people were able to get jobs, bank loans, house loans, any of that stuff. They were only allowed to live in one small area and that sort of thing. That was in a Republican area. Okay.
Right.
These were the people who were supposed to be against slavery, but yet they would not allow any sort of integration. So there was some residual guilt for me that I didn't see it as evil early enough. It was only when when the civil rights movement really kicked in, that I was able to say, oh, wow, that's here too. It's not just in Mississippi and so forth, that's going on here too.
Well, I would say the same thing for me. In the 60s and 70s, I was a kid, single
Yeah.
digits in the 60s and in my teens in the 70s. And people could come up to me and say, "Did you ever do or say anything that was racist?" I have to
Yeah.
honestly say, yeah, I probably did.
Hmm.
60s and 70s were a different era completely. If you took a kid from now and took them back to the 70s, they wouldn't know what the fuck hit them. As
Yeah.
I said, in the 60s and some of the 70s, racism was just accepted. It was
Yeah.
just part of the deal.
Yeah.
Everybody said, well, that's the way it is. You got the black people, you got the white people. The white people
But
are better.
it wasn't just black people. I remember one year in
No,
high
no.
school, the big thing was Pollock jokes. And I
Yeah,
realized that's a pejorative term. I didn't at the
it
time.
is.
Even Stanley Kowalski says, people from Poland aren't Polacks, they're Poles. That's from Streetcar Named Desire for you theater fans. But yeah, I mean, we didn't even know what that meant, but we were
No.
sharing these jokes. I wouldn't now because the Polish people would hit me,
Well,
and
I
they
remember
should, but I didn't know that.
I remember being a little kid and driving to my grandparents' house. My dad was a hardcore racist of all type. He was prejudiced of everybody that wasn't him, much like Donald Trump. But we'd go through Northeast Minneapolis, and Northeast
Yeah,
Minneapolis at the time was largely a Polish
Polish.
population.
Mhm.
And every time somebody pull out in front of them or do this or that, the Polacks this, the Polacks that. And I'm 7. I don't know what the fuck a Polak is or a Polish
Yeah,
person is. I it was just a given that you look down your nose at other people, and looking back at it, I'm ashamed of it because it was just stupid, and I'm angry with my dad for putting me in a situation uh, with somebody who has some authority and some influence over me to tell me that bullshit.
yeah. Well, I arrived in Minnesota just as the old ward system was breaking down. When you had Northeast was Polish, and this area
Right.
was Irish, and this was Hispanic, and so forth, right? I went to work at the Minneapolis post office when I got out of the Army, and I worked there for 5 years. And everybody I worked with practically was Polish when I started, and then I started to break down. And it wasn't the case as people retired and so forth. But at one point, the Polish community owned the post office, and that's what they did. They divvied things up. You
Right.
remember Walt Dietzick, right?
Right. Right.
Big political guy, um, and gradually that broke down in the time I was there, but it took a while. I mean, that was part of civil rights too that people don't focus in on. That it was ethnic beyond black and white. It was the other. It was the Irish up in Boston. It was the Polish in Minneapolis, here, there, all of that. Um, Fortunately, those who were able to blend better, weren't treated as badly. But you can remember the jokes about the Iron Rangers, right? Which were,
Absolutely.
they were all Eastern European settlers, came in to work the Iron Range and so forth. A lot of prejudice going on in Minnesota against pretty much everybody except the Norwegians, and even they didn't get along with the Swedes. So,
I had a friend in the radio business who was from the Iron Range, and he'd make jokes about Iron Rangers.
yeah,
And he'd say, "I'm an Iron Ranger, strong like bull, smart like truck."
yes,
And with that guy, he was pretty accurate, pretty accurate. Not the sharpest folks. I'm just looking at this. We're getting toward the end here now with the show, and I'm looking at the vote for the Speaker of the House. This is the first time through. Johnson has 216 votes. Jeffries has 215 votes, and other is 3. I don't know if we're at that point where he just missed by 2 points. They haven't called him a loser yet, but they're all running around talking and shit, trying to negotiate. But it says Johnson on track to lose the first round of the speaker vote. I
So
guess
what you're
that's not
telling me
surprising.
is all the Democrats voted for Jeffries,
Right,
right?
right.
But some Democrats are holding out to try to, I mean, some Republicans are holding out, or maybe they're independents, the three. Those three are looking for something.
They're looking for something, or they just don't like fucking Mike Johnson.
Yeah.
So they're doing what they did back with Kevin McCarthy. They're running around, making threats, doing deals, doing all this stuff. I have a feeling what's going to happen. First round ballot appears to fail to elect the speaker.
Yeah.
That's not surprising that the first time they're going to posture themselves and they're going to try to get something out of it some way down the road. I still
Wouldn't it
think
be
that
super if Jeffries got it? I don't see
that
that
would
happening. But my gosh, a divided House and Senate with the House holding the purse strings?
that would be crazy.
Mm-hmm.
My only problem with it is when we watched Kamala run for president and she sidled up to Cheney,
Yeah.
thinking that this might pull some of the people that just hate Donald Trump from the Republican side, and it
Yeah.
really didn't. I don't think the Republicans will ever vote for a Democrat under any circumstances. They're just too locked into their own little cult, their own little club, and they won't do what's best for the country. They'll do what's best for them.
I agree with you. I agree with you. I'm just saying it would warm my heart to see that.
It
I'm a
would.
fan of Jeffries to anyway, but that would be some real fun.
The one thing I like Jeffries too. I think he'd be a good Speaker of the House, and with as close as this margin is, a sickness, a resignation, it could flip to the Democrats pretty easily when we're
Yep.
talking about 2 seats, and we can only hope that that happens. The only negative thing I'll say about Jeffries is back when they were looking to um, have Joe Biden get kicked to the curb and to step
Yeah.
aside, it seemed to me that Jeffries is beholden to, obliged to, and somewhat controlled by Nancy Pelosi. That
I think you're
troubled me.
right. I think he got where he was because of Nancy's approval. Let me put it that way. Which doesn't mean that he isn't a worthy individual. It's
No,
just you
no.
got to play the game, right?
You got to play the game, but don't you? We've talked about this before. Don't you think it's time for these old people just to fucking step down? Nancy Pelosi did a great job, but she's 86 or whatever the fuck she is. We need the young people determining their own destiny.
Let me put it this way. I think any time that you look at yourself honestly and say, I'm Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I can hang in there for a while, or I can resign and let Obama replace me. She didn't. Guess what?
Right.
We got a Republican. Um, Nancy, I'm not going to be the speaker anymore, but I'm going to hang around here and look over your shoulder. Go home, enjoy yourself. Go to the beach, fly to Europe, do something. But if you think that only someone your age can do this job, you're wrong. You're just
Yeah.
wrong. And there should be age limits, and it shouldn't be 65. I'm sorry. Make it 60.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought you were going to go higher.
No, no, I'm for letting the young people try it. We wore out our welcome, and so did the people before us. And part of that was because we revered the quote greatest generation. Well, they were the ones who were the big racist and wanted to keep it that way in many places. They had as many
That's true.
failings as we did. Okay, but we let them stay too long, and then we stayed too long. You got to keep it fresh. You got to keep the hungry people need to come in and run things. That's all I got to say. None of these people are hungry.
No, no, they've got everything they need, and they should step aside and let you know how are 90-year-old people, 80-year-old people determining what we feel about abortion rights? These
If
fucking people, they can't have kids themselves. They don't have skin in the game.
That's exactly right. And not only that, they don't really, maybe they have grandchildren or something, but most of them have managed to make a lot of money while they're in there. I'm sure it's every penny deserved and they didn't do anything wrong, right?
Oh no, no,
No,
no.
but they can't relate to the average person where if milk goes up 50 cents, it's a big deal. They
No.
cannot relate to that. I'm sorry, they can tell me they can, but unless you have skin in the game, not. And their grandkids are well off too. Sorry, they're getting into the good schools. They're not having to take out student loans. They're doing okay. And what I want a poor legislature. That's what I want. I want them having to worry about making their house payment. That's what I want. I want them to have skin in the game and be able to do it, not to sit up above and say, "Well, you can make do if we do this." No, 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 no. You got to give it. You got to really be in there pitching to win for everybody. And I don't
You
think
got
you
to
can do that if you're a millionaire. You just can't.
no. You got to be able to relate to the people that you represent. That seems obvious and as simple as it can be, and it's just not that way. And I don't know if we get back to that or not. Well, Ed, we're going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. They're still dicking around with this
Yeah.
first vote. It doesn't look like he's going to get it the first time. That's not surprising. I think they ultimately will elect the speaker as Mike Johnson because it's going to cause too much trouble for them if they don't. But by the time people hear this, we probably will already know what the outcome is or
Yeah.
what kind of mess there is. So we'll keep you updated on the Rational Boomer podcast and TikToks and all that stuff. Tell people where they can find you. They need to fucking find you.
At Holler Troll on TikTok. Um, let's see, Reeling in the Years at Holler Troll on
YouTube.
YouTube. And occasionally I'll throw in a reel or something like that. But mostly the TikTok's where to find me at Holler Troll.
Check out Ed at Holler Troll, HOLERTROLL. He does an interesting thing. It's not strictly politics. It's very entertaining. Uh, uh, it's historical. It's entertaining. Ed is an actor by trade, so I think you'll enjoy it. He's let's get him to 10,000. Let's get him to 10,000 followers on TikTok, so we can start grifting TikTok for some fucking money.
Yeah, I'll tell you this right now. If I get to 10,000 on TikTok, I will publish my book. It's written. I'm just waiting to do that.
Yeah, yeah, and the book is going to be interesting. I've looked at it, and you're going to want to buy the book. You're just going to want to buy the book. So we'll let you know more about that as time goes on. So thank you, Ed, for joining us. Thank you to all the folks that took the time to listen. Hope you have a great day. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.